All right, this is the second video on Hugging Face small agents. If you haven't seen the first one, I'm kind of presuming that you've already seen that one. This one is going to focus mostly on building multi-agents in here. I do start off with just some quick tests and some quick explanations again of some of the types. And we also look at how you can use small agents with Ollama, Claude, Gemini, Gradio, and OpenAI. So check out the timestamps on the page. If you just want to jump to the multi-agents, go straight to that. All right, let's get started. Okay, so jumping into the code, first off, let's just take a look at sort of the basics. For the standard sort of code agent, you will import something like this, where you've got small agents, code agent, and then if you're going to use the Hugging Face API models, etc., you can use that there. You will need a Hugging Face token to be set in your environment variables to make this work. Once you've got that set, actually, you don't even need to pass it in as an API key. It will just automatically do it. Choosing the model in here, they give you a number of them that you can use for free, but you need to be on a paid tier if you want to use something like the Llama 3.370B or something like that. And I'm not actually sure how many tokens that gets you and how often. My guess is you need to look into the Hugging Face Pro status. But you can see here we've got just a very simple sort of little agent. And when we run it, it's going to call the web version of this model. So it would actually be pretty quick in here. You can see, sure enough, it was pretty quick. It's gone through. It's given us the answer pretty much straight away. The second sort of basic agent is doing something where you're using a tool calling agent. So you tend to use these for where you're just dealing something where you're going to get JSON back and use like a JSON agent in here. In fact, let's jump into the third one and look at tool calling agents there, which is running Ollama. So if you look at this, to run Ollama, you need to import the light LLM model. Once you've got that, you can run both Ollama, and after this, I'll show you running some proprietary models with it a little bit more as well. If I wanted to do something with a code agent, I'm best to use one of the sort of coda models. So this is using the Qwen 2.5 Coda 7B, as opposed to the one on Hugging Face, which is the 32B in here. And in this case, we're using just the DuckDuckGo search as the tool. Okay, so the output that you will get here will vary a lot. I really find that this framework is just not that good with smaller models. Even here, you can see that we've run it with the Qwen Coda. I haven't tried the 14B, so maybe that would be better. But you can see it works out to do the tool call, but then it runs into problems with the responses back. And it will tend to just churn through lots of tokens doing this. And then it may suggest some sort of more elaborate way of doing it, where in this case, where it's writing out a lot of things and suggesting this. I find this to be a really common thing for all the code agents when you're using a small model. Now, where you can get some okay responses with small models is where, and by the way, often adding additional authorized imports for the smaller models seems to confuse it more than help it a lot of the time. Okay, where you can get some decent results out with the small models is where you just use tool calling agents. And so this is basically a dummy tool set up for this, which is just going to return a string, and it will run. And you'll see that even with this small model of this Llama 3.2 3 billion model, this is how you can set it up in Ollama in here. It will do pretty good at being able to call the tool, but will then often do multiple steps going through the tool and the observations coming back. So you can see that while this works, it's come back and it's given us the right output there for that tool. The challenge here is that it's done multiple steps for doing the observation there. It's good that it gets to the final answer in this case, burns a lot of tokens on the way to doing that, and often can stumble around as well. On the whole, I would say you can use this with Ollama, unless you're prepared to run quite a big model though, or quite an advanced model. At the moment, I'm not seeing great results for using the code agent in here. The tool calling agent, you can certainly do stuff with, and really simple things, I guess you can do with the code agent as well, where you ask it to cube something or do something quite simple like that. My guess is that this will slowly change as people start fine-tuning their models to do some of these things, you could imagine that a fine tune of these Llama models could suddenly get a lot better at doing the code agent stuff once it's seen examples of inputs and outputs, just like people did with standard function calling, etc. All right, if we move on and do the exact same thing, though, now with a proprietary model, where we're going to do the code agent with Claude, and I just realized this is the older 3.5 Sonnet, not the latest one, you'll see that this should be able to handle it pretty well. So you can see, sure enough, it's worked out straight away that it should do Tokyo weather now. It's done the searches. It's getting information back. It's then using this to create an answer back from this. So with the proprietary models, they tend to just do better with this kind of thing. So that one was the Claude one. Even with the latest Gemini Flash in here, if we just give it this, it can handle both the code agents, although I will say not as well as some of the other models, and can handle the tool agents, no problem at all. So you can see this has gone through weather in Tokyo. It's done some searches. It will run in, I find the Gemini one definitely runs into some issues more than the Claude models and the OpenAI models. Okay, so the Gemini 2 Flash model in this case, very quick going through this. You can see that this does stumble into issues around the coding agent stuff, although can often pick them up. And then in this case, it comes to a final decision in here with a nice output in here. If we change to the tool calling agents, you'll see that Gemini has no problem at all doing the sort of standard tool calling stuff in here, that it can basically work out very quickly, and it only needs sort of one observation and gets to the final answer, as opposed to earlier on with the Ollama local model using multiple observations. And that seems to be quite a common thing in here. Okay, so next up is a really nice thing that they've got in here of where you can use the Gradio UI. So here you'll see that it's basically just importing a tool. So this is a text to image tool. You need to have trust remote code equals true to use these kind of tools. It's using the basic model from them, which is going to be the Qwen 2.5 coder in this case. And then we can just use the Gradio thing to launch this. And you'll see that once it goes through and runs and stuff like that, we've got this. So now it's actually using Gradio with Schnell running on Hugging Face. So let's look at that. Okay, so you can see that we've got a basic Gradio interface here. If I just type in, we can just do normal sort of text queries in here, and we're getting the response back. We can see any sort of tool use that was used in there. But we can also do things like this. Make me an image of a cat riding a horse. And you'll see that what it's actually doing is running the Flux model now on their servers to go and get a response and bring it back to me. Okay, so you can see we got this response back. Thought I will use the image generator tool to create an image of a cat riding a horse. So it's come back high res. It actually decided the prompt itself. It's run that through, and sure enough, there's the picture of the cat riding a horse. And this could be anything, any tool that you want, and you could run it through Gradio. So it makes it just super easy to make a Gradio little app in here. You can see that once we put that in, where we had the call of the cube of 2, it used Python to work that out, gave us a response back. Make me an image of a cat. It decided that, okay, it needed to use the image generator tool and went off and did that. I think where things are optimized to use these tools, these code agents are really good, and where the model is strong enough to do it. The challenge at the moment is that just the small models are perhaps not strong enough to do a lot of these things. All right, next up, let's look at actually making some tools, etc. For the multi-agent thing, you're going to obviously want to use tools. And you can see here is an example of a tool that they've made. So in their examples, like here, they've made some key things about tools. I will say that creating tools like this can be quite fussy. Here's some examples of some custom tools that I made myself. And this is using the Gina AI service for both scraping and their new thing for basically getting search content back, where you can basically do a query and then if you want to rag over the response of that. One of the things I like about the Gina thing is it will just return us back content in Markdown. So this is similar to what they've done. One of the things that you have to be really careful about is that if you're using the decorator tool, it's going to use this for the description and for arguments and stuff like that. It gets very fussy that it wants you must give it the type hints back of what it wants out. And you also must make sure that this is args, right? This is another thing. You can't use something like parameters or something like that. And you must make sure that you describe each of these exactly in there. So if you do that, you can then basically do a whole bunch of different things with tools. I haven't written any sort of safety code in here for checking or dealing with problems or anything like that. You can see we can put together some tools quite easily in here. And this is what leads us to the multi-agent stuff. And now I'll start with sort of their basic example, and then I'll show you another more fleshed out example. Even this one I've modified a bit. Now, the model that I'm using in here is GPT-4o Mini. I find this model seems to work very well with this framework. So certainly the Claude Sonnet model works well as well, but the 4o Mini seems to be working better than Gemini at sort of dealing with this, going through this. You can see here, let's look at the setup. So we've got the model defined, and then you start to define your agents. And your agents can be obviously either tool calling agents or code agents. In this case, they've got a web agent, which is a tool calling agent. It's using this DuckDuckGo search tool, and I'm using in this case the scrape page with Gina AI tool. Their original one, I think, was visit page or something like that. And I was just curious to see like how easy can I swap out their tools and still get it to work. And it seems to work quite well in this. So the difference, I guess, here is this is returning fully things in Markdown straight away from Gina AI. And so we've got this agent, which you can imagine is going to do searches and then do scrapes. And then to use that in a multi-agent system, we need to wrap it. So you've got this managed agent, which you wrap another agent in. So you can see this web agent, we're wrapping in this managed agent. And then now we just give it like a name and a description. So in this case, the name that they've got is search and description is runs web searches for you. Give it your query as an argument. It's pretty sort of standard stuff. And like I said, this is mostly taken from their example in there. They then have it where you have a manager agent, and the manager agent is going to be a code agent. You can give it some tools if you want to. You give it in the model, but you also pass in a list of any agents that it's going to manage. So in their example, they've just got this one agent, but it's been called multiple times for different sort of tasks in here. And then you can also pass in additional authorized imports for running with the Python, etc. So time, NumPy, pandas. All right, if we run this, I've basically changed their query to be a query where we've got multiple hops. So we've got what movie was released in 1955 that stars James Dean, and what is its Rotten Tomatoes score. So let's look at this. So it will go off and decide that how to do the different steps. So the first step is basically James Dean movie released in 1955. And it's going through and getting that. You can see part of the sort of guiding prompt of the manager agent that sort of guides this through. In this case, it's come back. It looks like it's sure enough, it's found that, okay, Rebel Without a Cause was the movie there. It then comes back with this calling tool, final answer with arguments. You'll notice that with the 4o Mini, you don't have as many code issues. So it's gone through, it's got that. It returns it back as a short version and as a detailed version in there. Here's the extremely detailed version of this. Sure enough, it finds out James Dean starred in the movie Rebel Without a Cause. All right, so then now it's working out that, okay, it needs to work out Rebel Without a Cause Rotten Tomatoes score. It does a search for that. You've been submitted this task by your manager. We've got the multi-agent thing going on there. And sure enough, it's using the Gina AI scraping tool to actually scrape Rotten Tomatoes from there. We can see that we've got all the details back. Finally, it takes this and it starts to put it to a final answer. And you can see, sure enough, it's got this answer of 93%. Let's just scroll down. It's given the answer nicely out in this sort of object where we've got the movie, the year, the Rotten Tomatoes score. And sure enough, if we come in here, we can see that, okay, it got it right. It was 93% was the correct score in there. So it was able to go through and do all those in the multiple hops, no problem, using multiple tools to do that and pulling those back. This was still just using the sort of manager agent, directing one agent to do different tasks in there. So let's move on and look at a little bit more advanced one. All right, so in this one, I'm going to look at adding multiple agents in there, not just use the same agent multiple times. This is going to be like a blog writer idea here, right? We're using the GPT-4o Mini. We've got a research agent, which has access to these different tools for this. I've added in the DuckDuckGo search tool as well. So it's got two ways that it can actually do search. So we've got that research agent, then we've got a managed research agent. So this sort of gives it like the agent name and description, in some ways a little bit like Crew AI, of where it's basically just taking in that agent, you give it a name. We could even play around with this where we could say this is like a super research agent, super researcher, right? And you can see that it's managed, its researches topics thoroughly using web searches and content scraping, provide the research topic, and it's just telling it that it needs to be provided the research topic is input there. Next up, we've got our research checker agent. So this is no tools in here. It's just the model, but we're basically saying checks the research for relevance to the original task request. If the research is not relevant, it will ask for more research. Then we've got the writer agent. Again, no tools for this. This is basically just writer. All of these, obviously, we're wrapping them as managed versions. So we've got this writer agent, writes blog posts based on checked research, provide the research findings and desired tone or style. We've then got a copy editor agent, again, just using the model. We could put some sort of specialized tools in there for these things if we wanted to. And you can see this is basically reviews and polishes based on the research, order the final blog posts and any lists. And actually that goes on to say in a way that's most engaging to someone working in AI. Now you've got the main blog writer manager here. So we've got this blog manager. It's going to be a code agent, of course. We're not using any tools for it, but we're passing in all these managed agents in there. So we've got managed research agent, managed research checker, managed writer agent, managed copy editor. And the only additional tool that I decided to pass in there was regex so that it can go through and get things out. Now, you could pass in a system prompt in here. So they've got a very extensive long system prompt in here. Would be great if they could make it so you could just pass in parts of system prompts to keep there. This shows you the system prompt that they've got in here. It's got a lot of nice ICL example stuff in there. So nice in-context learning example stuff going on in there. And then finally, I've just got a simple function. We pass in a topic and it's going to run this through and save it out as a blog post in here. So we can look at this. Okay, so the question I'm getting it to do is to create a blog post about top 5 products released at CES 2025 so far. I think we're only on day 2 or something. But you can see straight away, it's kicking off. It's working out that, what it needs to do. That it's going to research the top 5 products, including I've asked for specific product names and sources. Let's see how well it does. Certainly the research is coming back with lots of different products in here. We can see that it's doing the scrape page where it's decided to scrape this page and get information back. We can see even after that, it decided to scrape another page in here to get more information back for this. So it's certainly getting a number of sources now here. Now it's starting to put together the actual answer. And you can see that we've now got it where it's starting to give us the actual answers for this. It looks pretty good. And it's starting to put these together. And we've got like the top 5 products featured at CES 25 include AI integrated TVs, over-the-counter glucose monitors, Swipit fast phone chargers, a number of different things in here, Lenovo ThinkPads. And it's given us these. Let me just check this. Okay, sure enough, the sources are looking good at this stage. So we can see that we've got our output done here. We've got a key heading. We've got some subheadings in there for the 5 things. It certainly made sure that it's got the 5 things there. It's now sent it off to the copy editor. And we can see the editor request is please review and polish the following blog post about top 5 products released in CES 2025. Ensure clarity, conciseness, engaging tone throughout the content. The current draft is as follows, and then it passes that in. Now that's pretty nice that it's handled all of that with sort of custom prompt. We didn't need to tell it this prompt. It's come up with that prompt itself, just going through this. Coming back from this, we've now got a sort of more fleshed out article, although I don't see huge amounts of changes. And sure enough, it's saved it to blog posts. If we come in here and look at this, you can see that sure enough, it's got a bunch of these from this particular blog post there. What else do we have? And again, it's gotten the actual sources right for this. So all of these look like it's basically gotten the right things out, and it's worked out how to give us sources for each of these. So this has certainly done a good job at putting together, a basic sort of summary of this. It is interesting that when I ran this earlier, it got certain things about the NVIDIA keynote and launch that was on. That's not in this version at all. Obviously, each time it does a search, it's perhaps taking the sort of most keyword optimized article. We may want to tell it something like go through 5 different articles and find out the stuff that relates to AI the most, or something like that in our thing. But overall, I'd say that this has worked out pretty well in there. So this sort of shows you how you can basically just structure up multiple agents. And as long as you're using a pretty good model, you're only limited by the tools and stuff that are in there. So have a play with the multi-agent examples and try it out for your particular use case. I've also found that you really want to start making your own custom tools and your own custom examples for some of these in here. All right. As always, I love to hear your comments, what you tried it out on, what worked, what didn't work, etc. If you found the video useful, please click like and subscribe, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye for now.